I don't have very many mirrors in my house. Straight up, not a lot of mirrors. Don't look at mirrors a lot. So it's not until I sit in front of the camera that I notice weird stuff with my hair because I don't look in mirrors. It is what it is. That's right. Okay, so guys, we're live today for the Homestead Happenings update, and that is a live recording of the Living Free in Tennessee podcast. So we like to record this podcast live on YouTube for fun, and then we stay after and do questions and answers. So we're doing that today as usual. If you are new to this and have not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe and the bell button and choose follow all, and you will be notified with other live streams that happen. I do pop-up live streams from time to time. Haven't done a garden 30 in a while. Not that I haven't been in the garden, but I haven't been there as much as usual getting ready for Self-Reliance Festival. Truth be told, no reason to, right? Also, let folks know that we are live. I guess I didn't put it on MeWe. I got interrupted when I was putting it on MeWe. So nobody on MeWe knows. If somebody in the chat is willing to throw that out there on MeWe, that would be great. Also, if you know somebody who might be interested in this topic, go ahead and share this channel with them. I did want to talk a little bit about the non-skippable ad at the beginning of the live streams. I have, it'd be nice to get a little revenue off YouTube, and super chats are great and ad revenue is great. And I have, after kind of playing with the ad tools, I've decided a non-skippable ad at the beginning and end is a good way to do these shows. That means when we do live streams, the first 30 seconds you never hear. And so I just say a bunch of BS about welcome to the show during that time. I just did that today. So you didn't miss anything critical. I didn't realize that, but I guess it makes sense. Otherwise, y'all would be 30 seconds behind for the rest of the live stream if it didn't do that. Now, the reason I do the non-skippable ad and not the skippable ad is that the skippable ad, if you're listening to this while you're doing something, which most of you are doing something and listening and not actually watching my mug on the YouTube screen, it'll get into this loop unless you tell it to skip. And that's annoying because if your hands are dirty, you have to go wash your hands and then keep it going. So I just do the one that gives me, like a penny for everybody who watches one or something. And over time that can add up as there are more of us on these live streams. Anyway, today we have a fun Homestead Happenings live stream. I'm going to bring Tactical in probably around 9:45, although he may need to come in sooner because I'm looking at the show notes. And he may need to come in sooner. I probably should have told him more like 9:40. Oops. Hopefully he hears that. He's out doing chores in the holler, and he's going to tell a story that happened last night with one of the livestock that I was like, I can retell the story, but it's just kind of funny when he tells the story. Hopefully he won't drop any F-bombs in there. Anyway, I am going to now do the podcast. 5-second break. I will start. That gives me a nice flat line for when I edit the audio podcast. And anybody who does both live and audio, that's my trick. Take my trick, use my trick. You will save tons of time. I just heard Tactical drive up. And then we'll do the podcast, 5-second break, and then Q&A. If you have questions about what we're talking about or anything else and you are on the live chat, put the first few words in all caps, and then I'll star them, and we'll handle those all in the Q&A show. And I'm going to say one more time later about how to get Q&A questions in if you're on the audio podcast, because if you're on the audio podcast, you're not hearing this part anyway. Let's do it. Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, September 23rd, 2022, and this is episode 624 of Living Free in Tennessee, and it's a Homestead Happenings episode. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff. Fall is in the air. Fall is in the air. And we've got disappearing sheep. We've got a light at the end of the fencing tunnel, which has been a big thing here for like 4 months. And I also want to talk about, this notion of homesteading, but not being there, checking in once a week, having livestock, and why that sometimes ends in livestock dying that maybe didn't need to die. And that's part of your equation if you're going to if you're going to plan that into your homestead. So that's all things we're going to cover and more in today's Homestead Happenings update for September 23rd, 2022. Now, remember, guys, on the audio podcast or on YouTube, if you want to reach out to me with comments, things you think are interesting, stump the sauce, all sorts of stuff, you can do it by email. Just send me an email, Nicole at Living Free in Tennessee. That's Nicole at Living Free in Tennessee. Or go to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on contact, and those emails come to me. And I just remembered I got one, so I'm totally looking it up. And I'm getting it queued up for y'all for the live stream when we get to that section. Anyway, so the first thing we like to talk about is all about forage. So first segment in today's show is wild forage, and it hasn't really changed much since last week. The Jerusalem artichokes are 15 feet tall and they're blooming. And the funny thing is, like, I know where my Jerusalem artichoke patch is, but I have a totally new set of Jerusalem artichokes in my upper garden that I noticed yesterday when they made themselves known. And I guess I could have known they were there all along. I just haven't been paying attention. And I was like, oh, I wonder how you got there. It's a totally weird place for them to be, but there they are. And so I'm marking those with some, just like some surveyor's tape that, you know, plastic stuff that you can mark things with, so that I know in winter, dig here. I may actually cut the Jerusalem artichokes. They're a very pretty flower. It looks like a sunflower, but not with a black center. It looks like Rudbeckia, but not with a black center, with a light colored center. And I could actually use some flowers on the kitchen table after I go back to the land festival this time. So that's what's up in there. Persimmons are starting to get ripe, and we're having some cooler evenings, and that's sort of what makes persimmons ripe and apples ripe in our area. Remind you guys in the live chat, if you want me to see your question, because I see a question there I can't see, put the first few words in uppercase letters. I will star them for later. Watercress has been like coming on, dying back when it's hot, coming on, dying back. It's coming on again. And we have a whole round of mint, like a second harvesting of mint to get. And I like a lot of mint teas. And since I've reduced the amount of cocktails I have every week, I now like a peppermint tea a lot in its place. So I'm going to get my rear end out there and harvest some of that and dry it and just put it up for winter storage. There is no need, if you have any land at all, to buy peppermint tea at the store, because it grows so easily as long as you don't keep it from getting water. So if you're in a really hot, arid environment, you're going to have to water your mint. That's how you kill mint. You just don't water it. I've done it. I've killed so many plants in so many ways. So that's what's up with the forage. And if Tactical is listening to this, he really, really should come in soon, because it's about time for his story. Next segment is livestock. This is where we just talk about what's up with the livestock on the homestead. And we're at the final clearing evolution with sheep. I'm going to go into what that means infrastructure wise, but it's really cool because the pasture that we had them on, it's probably 16 or 18 acres, the clear section. And it has been, because of the timing of the sheep and the timing of figuring out how we were doing a fence charger without power that was strong enough to really whack them if they try to get out. The weeds were taller than me, some of them taller than Tactical. He's a tall dude, and, you know, stalks this big around, and they're eating those, the ones that they like. And then we have to like chop them down, and they eat all the stuff around them. And then that clears an area and you can actually see the shape of the land. Well, it's taken them a while to eat through everything. And had we been kind of more in tune with what we were going to do with the sheep, say in February, which I don't think we even knew we were going to get sheep in February. We were starting to think about getting sheep. We would have already kind of seen, for a four-wheeler to drive, because it's super steep. There are, you know, like it goes up and it has flatter areas, and there are areas that make sense that you can get to because there's access. They used to run cattle there. You can see that when the weeds aren't as tall as you are, but they were as tall as we are. So now we're finally able to kind of see what actually makes sense for where to run fence lines versus just making a fence line up through the, like, he bushwhacks through the tall stuff so that nothing's shorting out, puts the fence in, sheep eat it out, and then we we cut down the stuff and you can see the shape of the land, and you'll be like, oh, there's a big rock in my way that whole time. That was a real pain in my butt. And if I would have moved over 12 inches, it wouldn't have been there. Like, you don't know that until you get there. So that's kind of cool and tactical. You really should come in here. Next, just Zello him. The rabbits were bred about 4 weeks ago. So this weekend is when she's officially due if she is pregnant. I haven't palpitated her to see if I find lumps in there, but I might find lumps in there. Or I may come back this weekend to baby rabbits. So she has her like, we have a little area where she gives birth, like the little birthing boxes in the rabbit cage, and it's ready to go in case she gives birth. We've had trouble with our first round of rabbits giving birth, I think because they got fat. We overfed them. And so now we're not overfeeding them. Hopefully she has lost enough weight to be fertile again. If not, she may be graduating to rabbit stew land. And we have a couple more females in to see if we can at that point, we won't know if it's the male or the female. That's the issue. We haven't tried to breed her with Nighthawk's bucks, so that's actually next. And then if that doesn't work, we're looking at doing a whole rabbit redo. And, I might talk to John Willis about some of his because they do a pretty good job. The other thing is, like 2 days ago, and we'll get to you right after this story. 2 days ago, I walked into, I was in the living room having my coffee in the morning, and Tactical usually drops in the morning just to check in. And he can walk into my house, whether the door is locked or not, because there's a key code and he knows the key code. And I hear knock, knock, knock on my window. And I'm like, well, that's weird. That probably means something urgent's happening and his hands are full. So and he starts yelling at me to come outside because he needs help because he doesn't have enough hands. I come out and he's holding a duck, which at that time in the morning, the ducks are not out. But that means the duck was out. So I'm like, crap, we have an injured animal. I do not want to start my day this way. And he's like, I need help because we need extra hands. She had a string wrapped around her foot and it was attached to a stick. And so she wasn't hurt. She was just stuck. So what had happened to this duck, and we knew the day before we were down one duck in the coop and he was looking for it. And then he thought he saw the duck return. And then that next night, no duck, right? And so I thought, oh, maybe she's setting eggs in the yard. Well, in the morning, he went out to look for where the duck might be because it's easier to see with just one duck out. And sometimes they get up off their nest. And he found her floating in the pond near the edge, right?
Yeah, she was right at the edge.
Okay, so they can't hear you. So she was at the edge, but come over here soon. She was at the edge and he saw her, and she had a string wrapped around her foot with a stick stuck. Couldn't get out of the pond.
Yeah.
So she was probably stuck in the pond for like 24 or 48 hours. He picked her up, brought her up, and she actually had a square knot on the string. And the string had gotten wrapped around her foot, wrapped around a stick. The stick was only like a foot long. And because he broke it. So she was stuck in a tree in the pond. And so we were able to get that off. She kind of had, like, if you had a tourniquet on, you would have this indentation mark where it was. She had that mark on her foot, but her foot was fine. And she limped a little bit when she walked off, but she's not limping now. I think she probably had the worst case of pins and needles any duck has had. And I tell this story because if you have a homestead where you come in once a week and you kind of have things automated for your livestock, that duck would have died in a week, stuck in that pond. Probably. She either would have gotten too cold or maybe starved. It depends on how fast. I don't know how fast ducks starve, but there are lots of ways, or a raccoon would have gotten her. And so one of the things about homesteading, if you're going to do homesteading and be gone a lot, that needs to figure into your equation that sometimes animals will die because you're not there. Like sometimes they even die if you just two of you go to the store at the same time. Sometimes they die because you went into your house, right? But when you're regularly checking on your livestock, you can see changes in behavior. It's easier to see, like that sheep doesn't usually behave that way and now it's behaving funny, or that duck is limping. Let's go put it in an Epsom salt pool, or there's a duck missing. Whereas the ducks are just like a head count we do on the livestock. So that's the duck story. Tactical's actually here to tell you last night's disappearing sheep story, and you better come up here and talk into the microphone that direction. So, what happened last night when you heard barking last night? So just tell the whole story. No F-bombs, please.
Yeah, so I walk outside and dogs are losing their mind and they're going further and further up the wash. And I hear another dog barking. And it kind of sounds like a dog behind the house, which there shouldn't be any dogs behind the house. But where I was at, it could have been an echo. So I was like, okay, whatever. Well, a little while later, I hear standing from the right spot. That's definitely a dog somewhere behind the house, and my dog is losing her mind about it. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna make sure, go over to the barn and check to make sure the livestock guardian dogs are still in the fence. So I get on the four-wheeler and go over there, and as I'm pulling up the hill, I see two sets of eyes. I'm like, cool. They're sitting right in the corner. They hear the four-wheeler. They know I'm coming. They want a pet head, so I'll pull up there and pet their head. Get off, check on them. They're good. They're there. I'm like, cool. But I look over to where the sheep, where I would expect the sheep to be, where I have all of their stuff, where they would normally bed down for the night, and I see no sheep. I'm like, well, weeds are 5-6 feet tall over there, so they must be up the hill a little bit in the weeds. So I walk over there, no sheep. That's weird. So, like, did they decide there's a little cluster of trees in the middle of the paddock? Did they decide to bed down up there? So I start walking up the fence line because I can inspect the fence line while I'm walking up there, because if they jumped the fence, usually they'll pull a post loose or knock the wire off of a post or something. You can clearly see right there is where they skipped the fence at. So I start walking up there, walk all the way up to the top, and then I come down the hill into this cluster of trees, no sheep. Like, okay, this is just weird. Like, no signs that they skipped the fence, but no sheep. I'm like, what? This is just not normal. Like, even if they had skipped a fence, usually they skip the fence, go 10 feet, and start eating. And I still see no sheep. So I'm like, all right, there's a section where they were that I didn't come through coming up here. Maybe they went back over there. So I get back on the four-wheeler and start heading over there, and the fence charger's that direction too. So I look to see, all the places that they've been before. There's no sheep. Stop the fence charger. It's on. It's working. I'm like, okay. Well, then the dogs start barking. So I get back on the four-wheeler, turn around to head back over to their paddock, and I see 3 sets of eyes.
Henry?
I don't know which one it was, but I figured, at this point, worst case scenario is 2 dogs and 1 sheep. So I pull back over right up to where I see the eyes. I get off of the four-wheeler. I leave the headlights on, and I walk over to the edge of the fence. And of course, the weeds are 6 feet tall right there. And I get to where I can see through it, and there's 8 sheep standing there staring at me like a bunch of zombies. Like,
what are you doing?
What's up, dude? Like, why are you here? It's late. We were just eating, and you're kind of disturbing dinner. Like, why are you here?
So you had disappearing sheep.
Yeah, it literally, they must have been up in the top left-hand corner, because I didn't go up to that corner. And they had to have been up there grazing or something, which hindsight, I kind of felt like it was really late, but it was only 9 o'clock, and it's not abnormal for them to be up grazing at that time of night because it's not, extremely hot. So hindsight, it was okay, it is kind of reasonable that they would be out eating at this point in time. And it was just feeling like it was a little bit later. It was just odd.
Yeah.
Not the scenario I expected to find when I went over there.
Yeah, he was expecting to find livestock guardians off in the woods. And that was good that he didn't. That meant that there was another dog off in the woods, though we don't know much about that. So he had to do a whole patrol of, because the female sheep are on my property without LGDs. So, we want to make sure they don't get attacked or anything. And they didn't. So that's, livestock will keep you on your toes. It's actually a source of much entertainment, I find, the hijinks that they do. Okay, next up we have grow. This is where we talk about what's growing on the property. And are you going to join via your phone for the Q&A? Sure. Okay. I'll get that link out eventually. You have to get it to Steve. So livestock keeps you on your toes. Next segment is grow. This is where we talk about what we're growing. And at this point, the summer/spring garden's really winding down. My tomatoes have noticed it got cold at night, and they're a lot less happy. They've actually been telling me for a while they're ready to give up the ghost. And I don't have them set up in a hoop house or anything. So that's not going to extend into the fall terribly much longer. So I'm probably, I keep thinking I'm going to do this before SRF. It's not going to happen before Self-Reliance Festival. I'll be cutting the vines and I just leave them out for the tomatoes to dry on the vine or to ripen on the vine. And then usually by the end of October, they've either ripened or not. The ones that are still green, I just do fried green tomatoes with. And I don't have enough green tomatoes. I usually don't have enough green tomatoes to make pickled green tomatoes, which are delicious. But, if you don't have enough tomatoes to do it, it's not worth getting the canner out, right? So that's happening. I'll probably pull those right after Self-Reliance Festival. Right after Self-Reliance Festival, we're getting ready for the food forest install, but that's 4 weeks away. And we'll be pushing hard on the food forest stuff. We're doing a soil test. So Nick's going to cover, how to test your soil and add micronutrients for long-term health of your land, as well as how to plan for a food forest install from earthworks to fitting it into your permaculture plan for your place to actually getting the food forest out there. We're planting my food forest a little earlier in the season than we really want to, but that's okay. You can pretty much plant them at any time. It's just that there will be waves of other things being added to it over time. But mine's being set up with some very specific goals of not just feeding humans, but feeding livestock. And we're also running livestock through it to add their fertility. So that it's something that took a while to come up with as I figured out exactly what works on this property and what doesn't with my lifestyle as well, because I don't like to be out doing a whole bunch of, stuff all the time. I do love being on the homestead, but I'm also running the show, roasting coffee and doing big events like the food forest installation, camping event here that we're having in October. It's also my 50th birthday party. And the other, or Self-Reliance Festival, which it starts 7 days from now. We're not stressed at all. Also, my scheduler is fired because I'm going to go speak at Back to the Land Festival. I'm heading out tonight to go to Centerville, Tennessee, and speak at Back to the Land Festival the weekend before SRF. So I'm gonna fire my scheduler. Those on the video know I'm pointing to myself. I'm not really going to fire her. I'm excited to support this event, and it was a great event last year, so we're looking forward to that this weekend too. But that means that we're not doing the same old, weekend before an event. We're usually 2 days of lots of logistics. That's not happening this time. We're going to be off site doing lots of hollow roast sales. Margot says she's excited because her hollow roast arrived. So the garden's winding down. I am not doing a fall garden. So usually I would have already been putting out greens and all sorts of stuff for a fall garden. I decided not to do that this year. I have some things I want to do for weed control in my garden because it was the first year back on that garden after 5 years not in that garden. So there was a lot of challenge this year. And water system installation to just do drip systems in the rows. So I'm putting those to bed, prepping 2 of them for garlic. That will go in October. And I am going to ramp up the indoor lettuce growing operation in October, like October 3rd, 4th, in that range, right after SRF. It's time to get the seeds germinating and all that other stuff going and growing lettuce inside as I do for the winter, which is sort of my one nod to I'm going to be producing some food on site. but I'm not doing the fall garden this year. I don't see that happening with the fall roasting schedule. The one thing that's still happening pretty well in the upper garden, I'm getting a few tomatoes, and I did not get a blight problem up there this year, and I did use aspirin. So maybe it works. Maybe it was a not blighty year. I don't know. The green beans. So the planting of green bean seeds every 2 weeks worked really well because my early green beans did really crappy because it got too hot too fast. And the second to last planting did great. The final planting, I have like 4 plants from that. It did not do great. And I planted them right under the other green beans. So I think that doesn't work well placement wise. So I need to think more about how I rotate through, rotate out, and then plant. I was trying to plant them under the shade, which worked, but then they got some serious pest pressure. So I really think that is the thing I need to do, is really think about different rotations of green beans. But we're getting enough green beans every week to just cook and eat right now. I have enough green beans put up in part because I bought them from farmers. So that's all good for the winter. We're also getting, my peppers were 6 weeks later than every other farmer in the area, but they're coming on now. So I grew my first big bell pepper ever. I usually get little teeny bell peppers, but I got a good sized bell pepper. I got a few of those coming on. Jack Spirko's variety of jalapeno is coming on now. I got a big bunch of those coming on. I probably won't harvest those into October, and then I'm saving seed for that for next year. We've been saving seed now. This will be the 3rd or 4th season that I've saved those, and they are really great jalapenos if you don't want super spicy ones. They have that jalapeno flavor and a little bit of bite, not like a knock you on your butt bite. And I can tell you, the jalapenos I bought at the farmer's market this year, holy cow, they were hot. Like super hot. I don't usually pull the seeds out, but the seed and the pepper is where the majority of the hot resides. I had to pull the seeds out of those, and they were still super hot. So that was super crazy. And so that's the deal in the garden. I think I have nothing else to say on that. Yep. So that's what's up growing. We're really ramping down, and then it'll be lettuce, and that's it. Next segment is Holler Neighbors / Community. This is where we talk about y'all and the y'alls that live near me. I just made up that grammatical function. I don't know that actually works, but why not? We're on a live show. I get to do fun stuff. So the Eversols who just moved into base camp are going to start learning about animals, and they're doing animal care on Friday of Self-Reliance Festival because they are here, and then they're going to be there, and we really needed to cover Friday. And then my buddy Andy is coming for Saturday, Sunday, and by Sunday night, other Holler, like Nighthawk and Tactical, are back. So that's all covered. And that's the hardest thing about doing these off-site festivals, and why I'm not really keen to tour the country doing Self-Reliance festivals, is somebody needs to take care of the homestead, and I need my team, and my team lives here too. So somebody's got to be here, or we've got to get the things lined up with house sitters. And I have some good house sitters. The problem is they also like Self-Reliance Festival and want to go. So you can see how that gets a little complicated over time. So there are a couple times, I pull in every favor I can for Self-Reliance Festival. And usually when I go out of town, it's for things I can do by myself without Tactical and Nighthawk. But sometimes I need Tactical and Nighthawk. Self-Reliance Festival is one of those times. And yeah, I'm really pleased it's covered, and I'm not having to do some sort of commute back and forth to Camden, which is a 3-hour drive each way. Also, the electrical wiring for the projector is happening this morning, and one of my favorite electricians stopped by on his way there. He lives in Sparta. He's driving all the way out there to do it because I wanted to make sure the quality wiring was good. So I know 2 electricians who I trust, and one of them was not available, and the other one was willing to go out there. He's heading out to do that. While he was on his way out, I threw the entire SRFPA system into his truck to get that moved out, because we have a challenge getting everything from here to there, because we have a vehicle that's been down for 6 months. That vehicle is a truck. I do not have a truck to move the stuff. So if you are driving by my house between now and Self-Reliance Festival, especially if you're going to be in Camden, Tennessee, during business hours at Special Operations Equipment, let me know, because if you have room, I'll throw some things in your car, in your truck to bring out there. Everything I reduce for bringing out is one thing I don't have to figure out how to fit in my Tahoe with 3 people, and all the stuff that we bring, and the coffee that we sell, and that sort of thing. So that's been super helpful. And that's just the LFTN network at work. People have heard me say this. They're willing to bring things out there, and that's great. In fact, that dude's also bringing the hand washing station that Ryan Steva made. So that's pretty darn cool too. He made a really beautiful hand washing station. Now, this is going to be the first time the Holler neighbors hear this, but I'm going to be proposing that we find a day of the week to restart our weekly Holler neighbor dinners. We put those on hold as things were getting chaotic schedule wise. And while it is a busy fall, I have backed off on some projects that I'm no longer doing. And that means that we can do dinners again. If people want to do potluck once a week, I'll be tossing that out. We'll see how that goes. And if we do that, some hilarity may ensue. We might live stream the Holler neighbors again. Haven't done that in a while. Hoping to do that. And then, of course, the big community activity in the next 7 days is the Self-Reliance Festival and the Plant Guild Workshop by Billy Bond. If you haven't gotten your ticket and you're going to go to selfreliancefestival.com, grab your ticket. It's going to be so much fun. I actually have been working on, I'm going to perform live music at it, and it's going to be my songs. And yes, Wolf is going to be performed. That's the song you hear at the end of my show. And it's going to be different than what you hear in my recordings because we're doing an acoustic set. But I am so excited to do a live music performing of my songs, and I'm doing a couple cover songs, that sort of thing. I'm super excited to do that because I don't think I've performed sauce music in 15 years. It's been a really long time that I've played with a band, and I miss playing with a band, but at the same time, I'm not sure it would have worked if I had tried to play with a band between now and then. So Tactical, I did send you the link for the post-show Q&A that will be playing. If you could get those via Zello to Steve Eversole, that would be awesome. Anyway, next segment is infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we're building on the homestead. And the benchmark of we can finally see the steep pasture is huge. So what's happening from here, from a fencing standpoint on that pasture, which could already be done at my house, is we're able to figure out where maybe some permanent lines can go that we tap into, figure out what the real rotation will look like. Because what Tactical did was rotate down low where it's closest to the road to make it look nice for the person who's letting us use their pasture, and then go up high. And that may not be the most logical way to methodically rotate these animals through, right? And we want a 60-day rotation ideally for them so that they don't go back for 60 days to where they were before. Gives time for the grass to grow. And that's a way you interrupt the parasite cycle. It can be sooner than 60 days, I believe, but we're looking at 60 days for grass growth. And that means that he can put the fencing in that he needs to, which makes his life a lot easier, which has not been easy for the 4 months. And that's something about the sheep. Like every time you add an animal, it is extra work than what you think. And this time we knew it was going to be extra because that pasture has not been grazed for a long time. And that means that, oh boy, cold water on that tooth. Torture. Okay. Guess who's getting a root canal in October? Woohoo! So that is like a huge relief for Tactical. And it's a huge relief for me because he hasn't been doing other things he usually does. And we're going into winter and we've got a lot to catch up on, A. And B, he was really stressed out. And he's a lot less stressed out now. And that's kind of nice too, to not have a stressed out holler neighbor in my immediate vicinity. We are also really working on the winter strategies. We did the Winter is Coming episode a while ago. It's probably time for the first fire in the next 2 to 4 weeks is going to happen at my house anyway. I looked at the weather profile. It's getting cold at night. It's getting cold at night. Where our first frost doesn't look like it's going to happen before Self-Reliance Festival, but we may well get our first frost in October. That is what it is, right? sometimes we get our first frost in late November. Sometimes we get it in early October. We just never know. One time for my birthday, it was 32 degrees outside and freezing. And I went to the outdoor haunted house. That was fun. I remember like standing like bundled up, like one of those, you know, when you see a kid that gets bundled up for the snow with my arms kind of angling out as an angle waiting to go through this. The only thing I wanted to do was go to the haunted house at Short Mountain Distillery. They do a great, like they do a haunted forest. So you walk through a forest. It's really fun. You should totally do it. Short Mountain Distillery in, I don't know what county, Putnam County, Tennessee, I think is what county they're in. And it's near me. It's close enough to me. And they put on a great show. The owner of it used to work on other set design sorts of things. So they do a great job. And it's all a fundraiser for their local fire department. So that's what's up with infrastructure. Not terribly much going on. The goats are going to be put in the pond area to help graze that down as soon as we know what's up with the lady sheep and their babies, which is that we have no babies yet. We have no sign that babies are coming. And at some point there will be a sign, but the sign has not dropped, as in we have not seen any milk drop. Next segment is finances. This is where we talk about the finances of living on a homestead. And it is, I'm just going to say this. I don't buy meat. I do not buy meat. I actually might buy meat next week because I want steaks and I don't have steaks in my freezer. And I think I want steaks at the Airbnb in Camden for one of the meals. But one of the cool things that's happened at this point is all of the meat, basically, that we eat, unless we want a specialty item like pepperoni, which I'm not making, is coming from the homestead. Now, that means my grocery bill is up and my grocery bill is down. My livestock maintenance bill is up, right? So it kind of equals out in that way. That's why it's important to track your expenses. And it's just sort of been one of those things. I'm like, I could go to the store and buy something easy to cook, or I could just take this pork roast and put it in the crock pot, done. And that's just as much, that's actually less time than driving to the store to get something. So that's working out great. And I did cook one of the pterodactyls yesterday. I began cooking a pterodactyl. You're wondering what a pterodactyl is, I know. Well, pterodactyls were what we grew in 2021. Might have been 2020. Yeah, I think it's 2020. I think they're actually 2 years old, year and a half old. Pterodactyls were formerly known as chickens, but we did a late fall run of chickens in 2020. And that's because Nighthawk wanted a bunch of chickens. We thought we'd eat more chickens than we did. We did not eat as many chickens as we thought. And he really wanted to make sure the freezers are full. He and Tactical did a chicken run. And I said, hey guys, you guys are doing this on your own. It's fall. I've got coffee to roast for Christmas orders. I've got Jack Spirko's event to go to. Not happening, right? So they did them. And on the day, so they were 2 weeks later than usual in processing them. And it was the kind of meat bird that grows quickly. So these things got huge. Absolutely huge. And when they went to process them, they realized that the three of us processing works really well, and the two of them processing doesn't work as well. Plus, we had pterodactyls, and my plucker at the time, if a bird was over a certain weight, it would trip the motor, and they wouldn't. So some of them had to be hand plucked, and then the weather was kind of crappy, but they needed to do it on this one weekend, and they were too big to fit in my vacuum seal bags. You had to cut them in half. So there was an extra step for every bird. And then some of them were like turkey size, like Thanksgiving turkey size, like 18-pound, 20-pound birds. So we named them pterodactyls because they were huge. And the last pterodactyl came out of Nighthawk's storage area about 3 weeks ago. I said, any birds from 2020 that are left need to come to my inside the house, like little freezer, so we get rid of them because they're going to get freezer burn and we don't want that. And he showed up with a pterodactyl. So only one bird could fit in my freezer. That's how big this bird was. And finally, I was like, Mama Sauce is coming. Mama Sauce likes chicken. I don't like chicken as much as I used to. So we also haven't been eating chicken as fast. And she loves chicken though. So I'm like, well, what am I going to feed Mama Sauce? So I get the pterodactyl out and defrosting in the fridge, and I could not decide what to do with this bird, like, because it's kind of hot. It's up. It was 90 degrees yesterday. If I run the oven, which is perfect to roast a bird that big, great. Or I could get a turkey roaster out and put it outside, and then all that heat goes outside, right? Finally, I'm like, I'm not in the mood for roast chicken. And and then it leaves all the bones, and I got to do something with those. And I'm traveling tonight, Friday night, back to the land festival, and I don't really have time to oversee the cooking of the bone broth and the canning of the bone broth or the freeze drying of the bone broth. So I finally thought chicken tacos are good. I'll probably like the chicken tacos too. And so I skinned this thing, and I took the meat off the bones for just the breasts. And the breasts were like huge, like meals in themselves. Just think turkey breast size breasts coming off these chickens. And I cut them into smaller pieces, cooked those for taco meat, took off the leg thighs, put those in the fridge for cooking today. Tactical, by the way, you're cooking legs and thighs for your dinner tonight when we're not here. And I recommend roasting those. And then made great taco meat. So the rest of it, which still has a decent amount of meat on it, went back in the bag into the freezer. And yes, you can freeze things twice. And then that'll go into the crock pot for chicken stew, probably after Self-Reliance Festival, unless I decide to ask Tactical to throw it in the crock pot on Sunday, which I might do, and then make chicken stew on Sunday night when we get back to the land festival. So that's what's up with finances. Like all of that is just stuff from the land, and it's great. The only thing I'm buying at this point are some spices, salt, pepper, stuff like that. And also, if I want a specific sauce from the store, I buy that, or, treats. Like I consider Vienna sausages treats. Don't kill me. Sometimes when you're on the road, just popping a can of those, super easy. Or smoked oysters, seafood I buy, and things like onions. So I grow garlic. I don't buy garlic. Onions, I've never really gotten big onions off my garden, nor have I tried. And I get those at the farmer's market. I get sweet potatoes I'm growing here, but I get sweet potatoes at the farmer's market. Stuff like that I get in bulk usually. And that really has changed. How that's made my life better is I don't have to go to the grocery store a lot. And when I do, I'm buying some heavy whipping cream or something. I'm not buying a huge amount of stuff. And so I don't spend as much time in the grocery store. And that's really nice because I like to spend my time here, my free time here, or my free time at this pool, or my free time doing, other fun activities. Anyway, that is today's Homestead Update show for September 23rd. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. Just head over to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on membership, and sign up. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week. All right, we're into the Q&A section. I'm gonna just remind Tactical. I asked him to get the link to the Eversouls in case they wanna come on, and I did put the link out on the Holler Neighbor Telegram, which I think the Eversouls are not on, and we should totally get them on there, and I will eventually. I don't think Jenny can join us today because she's at work. Nighthawk's at work. I'm going to go through the questions y'all put in the live chat. Before I do that, and before I bring Tactical on, just because we get a little feedback when he comes on, I'm going to answer this. This one came from Alyssa via email. So guys listening to the Q&A show, on the audio podcast, if you want to get a question on the Q&A show, email me, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com, put LFTN Q&A in the subject line, and I'll know what it is, or use the contact form, and I'll do my best. So this one comes from Alyssa. I don't know if this is Stump the Sauce or better for the Friday finance area, but I have a question. How do you and the more permanent Holler neighbors divide and track financial obligations? How do you determine what belongs to who and who pays for what? I've been moving towards a multifamily managed property and am helping to manage a farm my family owns. Would like to buy my own farm in the next 3 years. The one thing that makes me the most nervous is making sure that the financial situation is well laid out so that it does not cause stress or disputes. Any insight would be appreciated. Okay, so this is one where I would say Holler neighbors don't have things figured out all the way. We do the best that we can. We have trusting relationships with each other. And because of that, we have each other's best interests at heart. So nobody's trying to screw anybody. But I think in communities that develop, that if you take market forces out of them completely, you end up with disparities and resentment and that sort of thing. And so what's happened in the Holler neighborhood is you make the decisions about the land that you own or rent for that land. There's some caveat there. So my piece of land is 3.2 acres about, and final decision is mine on this land about everything on this land. Tactical rents, and he pays me rent for a cabin on this land, and Tactical really does a lot of work here. And so when he does that, he sees things I don't see, because he actually does more on the property than I do right now. And so I listen to him very carefully, but he runs big things by me, like little things he know, like we've got that figured out. But he runs big things by me, like if we're going to put a woodshed up, where that would go. He'll be like, I think it should go here. I'm like, why do you think it should go there? I think it should go this other place. He's like, because really good reason. And then I say, yeah, you're right. Let's do it there. I say, but this other thing. And he goes, oh, didn't know about that. So a lot of that we talk about. So that's the decisions. Financially speaking, if it's a big expense, we talk about who's paying for what and what that means long term. Like if he's paying for something and it's something for my property, like we got a little storage cabin that may turn into a tiny cabin long term, but it has my coffee bean storage in it. Tactical paid for that. I didn't have money when that opportunity came up. I paid Tactical back for that. So we had an agreement for me to pay him back. And I paid him back. It took me 2 years to pay him back. As far as livestock stuff, we will go, like for the chickens, we'll go in together on that to cover the cost of the chickens, divide the work based on. So we're talking by project, guys, here. We'll talk about who's doing what to take care of the chickens. And then we also have the conversation, what can we do to raise revenue to pay ourselves back? So if we do a chicken processing event, money comes in to pay us back, right, for the expenses, and then we get free chickens. And this year we got free chickens. Last year our chickens were $8 a chicken. So then if you were going to use a chicken from the 2021 stock, that's $8 that goes into the pot for buying, feed and that sort of thing. And so that's the other thing, is we sort of have an informal pot. Now I can say that pot, not like marijuana pot. We have an informal pot of money where we go in. Now the sheep are primarily Tactical's project, and he has done the majority of the finance on that. I have put some money in. We do our best to keep track of that. And then when we process sheep this fall and sell them, that money goes to Tactical, right? And he will hopefully eventually be able to pay me back for some of the things I put money in on. So that's how the finances work here. As far as rentals go, the Eversoles are renting from Tactical and me. We make big decisions there, but as far as day to day there, they, like if they don't want people saying the F word on their property, I'm not going to come over there and say the F word on their property, even though I own it, because they're renting from me and I need to respect their foundation. So that's how we do it. It's more of an ownership model. If we get the 70 acres we want to buy that are near us, that are not for sale, but I know the owner and I've been trying to get that person to sell it, and we bring in more people, we have a list of some people, mostly from the Tennessee SD group, who want to have an acre or 5 acres where they can have sort of I'm not living here full time, but I can be out here sort of cabin, or they want to be here more permanently. They will own their 5 acres. To be able to buy the 5 acres, we have to have known you long enough to think we will get along. And there has to be a relationship and friendship and trust. And then I think what we will do with those is it has to be bought back at fair market value by the community first. And then if the community can't afford it, then it goes on the open market if somebody decides to sell. So that's sort of how we work that out. With that, I am going to bring Tactical on, and we're going to go into the other questions. Guys in the live chat, if you want to say any, if you want to have me see your questions, I have 6 questions queued up. I will go through those and then I'll scan and see any other things in all caps. And then we'll wrap up the show if there's nothing else. But let's get Tactical on. And I see that Tactical is upside down and I'm looking at, I don't know what I'm looking at right now. It looks like a plumbing fitting or something. Anyway,
Especially a
Tactical,
ladder.
how's it going?
Oh, busy as always. I'm still working while I was waiting for this.
Yeah. Yeah, he popped in and told his sheep story on the podcast, and then he got to go back outside, and you guys get to see the beautiful sunny sky. It rained. So yesterday it wasn't supposed to rain, and it rained, but not long enough to make enough of a difference for us. So we're really picky. I was like, yes, it's raining. I hope it's raining at my house. It was raining way harder where I was than at the house. But we got a little bit of water. Things are kind of happy. Okay, so the first question I have is from Miss Fredwina saying, what do you do with Jerusalem artichokes? Jerusalem artichokes are kind of sunflowery looking family, and it's not like an artichoke like you'd see at the store. You eat the tubers that are underground, and I think they have a low glycemic impact, so that's good. So not as starchy as potatoes, for example. And they grow into these sort of funny shaped roots that look a lot like ginger does. And what I do with them is put them on salads. You can grate them fresh on salads. They're called fartichokes for a reason. So if you do not cook them, they may have the impact of giving you lots of gas. So if you are one of those people, do not grate them raw on your salad because you'll have lots of farts. That's one thing. If you cook them, it kind of knocks back that whole fart thing. And they're really good steamed mixed with butter. So delicious, and garlic. Or you can cut them up and saute them with a stir fry. So they're just sort of like a root vegetable. You can add to things, and they have a unique flavor. I don't know why they're called Jerusalem artichokes. They sort of remind one mouthfeel wise of the heart of an artichoke, but not really. They do not taste like artichokes, but they don't taste like much of anything. They taste like what you spice them with. So that's what you use Jerusalem artichokes for. And then they put on beautiful flowers. So, if I get time today, which I probably won't, I might go pick some and put them in a vase on my table. And when I come home, hope that they're not dead in 2 days. But they make a beautiful wildflower addition to a wildflower bouquet. And it is wildflower bouquet season. It has been for a while. We've got goldenrod, we've got Jerusalem artichokes, we have black-eyed Susans, I have dahlias finally starting to come on the hillside garden. Not enough to harvest. I might get one more rose off my my whatever that is, winter blood, or I can't remember what it's called, but it's red on the outside and white petals. Love that one. I thought I killed it because I transplanted it. I transplanted it last fall as we started the hillside garden project. And then I moved it back in the spring to the hillside garden once it was done, and it was not happy with me. But it appears to have gotten over that. Okay, next up we have Lacto fermented green tomatoes are good. Yeah, in fact, I am lacto fermenting some hot sauce, which was like a surprise project I added to the fermentation webinar I did for Live Free Academy. If you want to buy that, it's livefree.academy/fermentation. But that one at the very end, I said, this is how I make hot sauce. And it's a ratio of, and I do it in a mason jar, half-gallon mason jar, a ratio of garlic, tomato, and jalapeno peppers. And I use those really hot jalapeno peppers from the farmer's market. So this ought to be interesting. And I put those in the jar with some spices. It's fermenting. I'm going to ferment those up until the week before the workshop, the food forest installation workshop I'm doing at the end of October. And then I'm going to make the hot sauce. What I do to make the hot sauce is I pour the brine off and keep the brine. I put all of that stuff into the blender. So that means I've cut the stems off the jalapeno peppers. So there's no sticky stuff in there, like stick-like items are not in there. And I blend it with a little bit of the brine until it's the consistency I want. So I puree it up, and then I'll store that in the fridge. I could can that, but why? Because it's living, it's good for you. It'll store in the fridge for a really long time. So that's what I do. So that's one way to lacto ferment tomatoes. And I'm sure lacto fermented green tomatoes with lots of garlic and a hot pepper and dill would be delicious. Never tried it, Josie, but I bet that would be delicious. Next one comes from Margot. Can you use the slope up behind the garden to move rainwater to the garden? Only if it rains, Margot. The problem has been it did not rain. It did not rain. There's actually a barn for the goats above the garden too, that when we get into our rainwater collection phase of homesteading, which we are not in right now, we are currently in the reroute all the water pipes so that I gravity feed my house from the pump house phase of water here. But we do plan ultimately to put some rainwater collection off of various roofs here because it just makes sense. In fact, I will eventually make it so I'm going to gravity feed the spring water. I'm going to pump it up the hill to gravity feed to my house, but I'm also going to find a way to collect water off my roof to that same location if I want to reduce how much of the water needs to even be pumped up here. And Sean Mills at the Food Forest Install event is going to be head dude on that whole system. So we're not putting in the final storage tank. I believe we're adding an IBC tote in because while we're doing earthworks, we are going to run the pipes from the pump house and get that system set up. And so he'll be here teaching how we do that. So if you're interested in water systems, that would be a really good event to go to. I guess I should say, if you want a ticket to that, they're at livingfreeintennessee.com. They're sort of in where I do that event highlight area. If you're on your computer, it's on the right-hand side. If you're on your phone, you have to scroll a little bit. It's the Food Forest install. I feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There will be alcoholic beverages. There might be oysters in the house, half shell on Saturday if I can get them timely from Maine. And Saturday night is my birthday party. So we're going to have a lot of fun Saturday night at that event. It might be cold. I've got outside propane heaters. Anybody in Tennessee who's willing to let me borrow their propane heater for this event, I would love to do that, to have multiples. We'll have campfires. If it gets super cold, base camp is where we're doing classes, and we can go into the basement there, and we will find other ways to be warm. What we don't know about the last weekend of October is if it's going to be just like now, if it's going to be super cold, or if we're going to have a heat wave. And we'll know that closer to the event. Camping in this is included with your tickets on that one. But it's two things. It's the Food Forest install, and Sean Mills is talking about doing the gravity fed water system, why we're doing it, how that saves on power for me, which is great because what he has helped me do is start peeling things off the power grid that makes sense financially. And that's part of me turning this property into working for me instead of me paying to be on this property, which is part of that homesteading mindset. Next one comes from Sally. What are the words to your song you play at the end of your podcast? That is from a song called Wolf that I wrote that I will be performing at Self-Reliance Festival. And the part you hear is desire. The word is desire. That's why I'm going, desire. That's desire. He's searching for desire. And the song is about a wolf who is howling at night, lonely, because his partner has died. And it goes through just the whole story of this wolf, and that her ghost is really still with him. And that's the chorus, the first chorus. Those are the words to that chorus. So a lot of people like that song. And that's why I've been meaning to roll out those songs, just release them for people. And I just figured out how to do that this week. And the time for me to set it up to be done, because I figured out how I could outsource the doing of the thing. And the reason it hasn't gotten done is the doing of the thing takes time. I've got to do graphic assets. I have to do the explanation. I have to put it on the systems. I have to release it to all the music distribution stuff. I have to have a way for people to buy it if they want to buy it. I have to have a way for my members to get it for free if they're a member. Like all of that takes time. And I've had some mental blocks on outsourcing stuff because I've had a lot of bad experiences outsourcing stuff, and I finally got over myself this year, and I've started outsourcing stuff, and it's making my whole life better, and I've gotten better. So it's not that everybody's terrible at outsourcing. It's that I have to manage myself on how outsourcing works, clarity, checkpoints, making the time to actually give the feedback. All of those things have to be done right, and then you outsource. I figured out how to do that this time. So those will be coming out probably in 2023. Josie wants to know, does Jack sell seeds for those jalapenos? Where can I get some? Jack does not sell seeds for those, but he has a workshop in November, and sometimes he has seeds available. Also in November at Jack's Beer Co., sometimes you find a jalapeno on the ground and you come home with it, which is how I got mine. And I do a seed exchange. So we did a seed exchange at the spring workshop. And that was here. In fact, I will do a seed exchange at the Food Forest install, and I still have Jack seeds that I can share. I will have collected this year's as well, but I have been spreading those out every time we do a seed exchange or a seed trade sort of thing, because the more people that have them, if I fail one year, I can just get them from somebody else. And we've done this with water hyacinth too in the Tennessee GSD crew. Water hyacinth, I have never overwintered water hyacinth as long as I have lived. I've gotten new plants from Jack. I've gotten new plants from Brian Young. So Brian's pretty good at overwintering it. He manages to do it successfully every year. I think because his house gets more light. I tried artificial light this year, but I put them in my aquarium with my fish. And I think the change of water stressed them. So I think what I'm trying this year is to get the pond water from what they're inside with lights on a schedule, and they're nutrient hounds. So I need to add nutrient to the water, but not too much at one time. And if they're inside a long time, anytime it's above freezing, I'm putting them back out in the pond where they're used to being. So we'll see if that works. If that does not work, then whatever. Okay. I have one last question, and unless there's anything that comes up in the comments, we're going to say goodbye after Tactical gets to say whatever else he wants to. Hey, do we have baby rabbits yet, Tactical? He's going to have to unmute before he can answer this question, and then I'll bring this other question up.
Not the last I looked, but I'm over there, so I can... Yep, no babies.
Any nesting going on?
No, there's some fur, but that looks old.
Okay, maybe we should give her some straw today. She's not really due till Sunday, so, you just never know with pregnancy what happens. Okay. Next question is, what is the best way to pressure can chicken? So you guys can ask me anything on this, from how Holler Neighbor finances work to how to pressure can chicken. Pressure canning meat. So I used to say, if you're going to learn how to can things, you should start with pickles and then go to fruits and then go to sauce like tomato sauce and then go to pressure canning something like green beans, because that's your first switch to pressure canning green beans, and then or green beans or broth, but actually broth, then green beans, then soup, then meat. And then I started pressure canning meat more, and I realized actually it's way easier to pressure can meat than to pressure can everything else, than the green beans and all that other stuff. So I changed my order. The first thing you should learn how to do is meat. And the way you pressure can chicken, bone in or bone out, is you shove as much chicken into a jar, fresh chicken, till there's an inch of headroom, and you really cram it in there, man. And you clean the rim to make sure there's no goo on top. You make sure that rim does not have any chips in it. You put the lid on hand tight, and you pressure can that for the prescribed amount of time for chicken, which I think might be 80 minutes, but do not quote me on that. I never can from memory times, unless I just looked at it yesterday. I have a cheat sheet in my kitchen, which is going up on the member portal as a free download. It's just the canning times I use, and it has some recipes I use all the time for canning. The only thing in the way of that going up is I was going to lay it out differently than it's laid out right now. And there's one time that's wrong on it, that Mom and I worked together on it, and we had conflicting inputs from sources, USDA and the National Center for Home Food Preservation times. And the thing is, the National NHCFP, National Center for Home Food Preservation, they have on their tomato page a formatting issue, an error that they made when they laid it out online. And so it's hard to see which time goes where. That's where that comes from. And that's the thing that has the wrong time. So we're going to adjust that. I may lay it out differently. I may leave it in its current format. And then that's going up on the member portal along with the fermentation guide that I made for the fermentation workshop. I just thought that'd be a cool little member perk. But that's how you pressure can chicken. You don't have to add any liquid. You don't have to pre-cook it. You put it in there raw, pull it out, and let it cool. I let it cool overnight. Double check that the jar is sealed right, because sometimes they don't. I'm getting 1 jar of every batch of 7 is not sealing right because the quality of jars have gone down. So when I use my old, it's actually the jars, not the lids, I think. The old jars that I have do better. and the new jars don't do as well. I think it's because the glass is thinner, guys. I just don't know. Or they have a little seam up there. Maybe I need to start taking the grinder to the glass and hope I don't break the glass. And then you just label them. I like to eat them within a year. They can last 2 years or more, and store them in a cool, dark place. If light hits them, they start degrading faster. Home canned chicken with the bone in makes the best base for chicken soup. So when I make a homemade chicken soup because somebody's sick, I'm taking it from a jar, not from the freezer, if I don't have to. Maybe I should can that carcass that's in the freezer. Now, that one we're actually going to do the other one. Okay, got another question here. Do you eat sweet potato as part of keto? Yeah, so I eat anything as part of keto. I keep my carbs under 25 because I'm in a weight loss phase right now. And that means that I try to keep the carbs under 25. Every so often, I do I'm allowed to cheat sort of thing, and I'll have ice cream or something. But I'll have a little bit of sweet potato as part of a meal. And at Thanksgiving, I'll have a lot of sweet potatoes. I also eat the sweet potato greens. So that's all. It's a lower glycemic impact than potatoes. I also eat a few potatoes sometimes. I had 2 mouthfuls of mashed potatoes at my cousin's wedding because they were delicious. So I don't like stress out about that. I just don't eat them every day. And the sweet potato, like the volume of what I'll eat is I'll cut one in half and I'll have half, and Tactical will have half because he's also a ketogenic eater, right, Tactical?
Yep.
I muted you because you were feeding me back.
Yeah.
Josie wants to know, how do I join LFTM using crypto? Josie, you send me an email, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, and we'll figure it out. Letty Lou says, isn't there a webinar didn't you do on canning meat? People can access. Yes, I have several. I did a beef canning webinar, which is the same process as for chicken, at livefree.academy. It's probably /beef. I don't know. I can get that link though. And then I have another meat canning. I have a chicken canning webinar on the member portal. So there is that. Okay, Josie, do you use the lids that come with the jars? That's a great question. Not unless I have to, and certainly not when I'm pressure canning. Why? Because they wear out. What happens with jars that have traveled a lot is they've sucked down and been released, and sucked down and been released. As the temperature of the air in the jar changes, that puts a little ridge on that lid. And I don't like to trust a gasket on the lid that has been imprinted on. And so I will use those lids if it's just dry storage, but I usually don't can with those lids. I can with brand new lids. And that's just me. That's because I've seen over time those lids fail. And I think it's because that rubber is not as thick as it used to be on there. Like I have those fail all the time. I don't even use them. That's just me. I don't know what the official advice on that is. Okay, we're out of question, guys. Thanks so much for joining the Q&A. We will do the next one, not next Friday. So next Friday, there's no Homestead update because we'll be at Self-Reliance Festival. I have a great interview show from Robert Ralston about prepping with a special needs child and some other things about just prepping that he shared with us. He's from our community. So that'll be next Friday's show. And then we'll be back the week after for another Homestead update and Q&A combo. Guys, thanks so much for joining, and make it a great week.